A ride back in time. Imagine this. You blink slowly, your body sinking into the softness of your modern bed, eyes growing heavy as sleep approaches. But when they open again, you're not in your room anymore. You're lying on a wool blanket, spread over dry, hard-packed earth. Above you, a sky so wide and so empty it feels like you could fall into it. The year is 1874. The sun is just beginning to rise over the vast plains of the American West. Welcome to the trail. You are now a cowboy. No, not the kind with a gleaming smile and a six-shooter slung low like in the movies. You're the real kind, bone-tired, dust-covered, sore in places you didn't know could be sore, with a crust of sweat and grime that hasn't been washed off in days. The sharp chill of dawn creeps into your clothes. Your back aches from another night of sleeping on uneven ground. Your mouth is dry, coated with a layer of trail dust that never quite goes away. Around you, other men stir under ragged blankets, groaning as they prepare to face yet another punishing day of cattle driving. There's no breakfast buffet, no warm bath, just the smell of bitter coffee bubbling over a fire and the knowledge that you have another 20 miles to cover today, driving 2,000 head of longhorn cattle across a sun-baked plain. In your bedroll lies everything you own: a spare shirt, a pair of socks, a straight razor, and a crumpled photograph of your mother. Your wages, $35, hard-earned over 4 grueling weeks, are folded carefully inside one boot. Forget the myths. There is no glamour here. This is not the Wild West of Hollywood saloons and shootouts at high noon. This is the real West. A place of blistering heat, bone-deep exhaustion, sunburnt necks, and men who haven't bathed in weeks. And yet, there's a certain kind of peace in it. You rise before the sun, eat beans and jerky, tie your scarf over your mouth to keep out the dust, and swing into the saddle for another day of slow, steady riding. You don't ask for comfort. You don't expect luxury. What you get is freedom, not the loud kind, but the kind you feel when no walls surround you, no clocks dictate your time, and your only boss is the horizon. There's danger, too. One wrong move can spook the herd and cause a stampede. A slip crossing a river could mean death. But there's no room for fear out here. Just the soft rhythm of hooves, the low murmur of cattle, and the endless wind. This is a story about that life, the real cowboy life. A story not of fame or fortune, but of calloused hands, sleepless nights, dust-choked lungs, and a kind of raw, simple endurance that most people today will never know. So lie back. Let the hum of the wind and the clink of spurs lull you. Let's leave behind the world of lights and screens for a while. And step into the saddle. You wake to the sound of coughing. Someone near the fire is hacking up the night's dust, a deep, rattling sound that's strangely comforting. It means you're not the only one still alive. The stars are still overhead, dimming slowly as the faintest ribbon of dawn colors the eastern sky. Your breath fogs in the cold morning air. You're still wrapped in your blanket, stiff from the chill that settled in overnight. Your back is sore, again, but that's nothing new. The ground isn't forgiving, and there's no mattress soft enough to cushion a cowboy's body after a long day in the saddle. A few feet away, the camp cook, Cookie, everyone calls him, though he answers to much worse, is stoking the fire. Sparks leap upward as he tosses in another piece of mesquite. The heavy pot of coffee is already bubbling, its thick, bitter scent cutting through the morning haze like a promise. You sit up slowly, every joint protesting. Your hat, battered, sun-bleached, sweat-stained, lies beside you, resting on your bedroll. You reach for it first, placing it on your head before doing anything else. It's more than a hat. It's a shield from the sun, the rain, and the trail dust that will soon be back in your face. You shake out your boots before putting them on. It's a habit learned fast on the trail. Spiders, scorpions, even snakes, none of them are shy about curling up in the warmth of a leather boot. Nothing wakes you up faster than a scorpion's sting before sunrise. As you pull them on, your fingers brush the inside of the left boot. The folded bills are still there. $35. Your month's wages. Not much, but it'll get you through a few days in Abilene once this drive is done. Maybe a real bath. Maybe a hot meal that didn't start in a tin or end in heartburn. Around you, the others are rising too. Groans, coughs, the occasional grunt of pain. Boots are pulled on, blankets rolled up tight. There's no time for laziness. The trail boss doesn't like delays. The cattle won't wait, and the sun will be up soon. You take your tin cup and move toward the fire. Cookie doesn't smile, doesn't greet you, but pours you a cup anyway. The coffee is black and strong enough to clean iron. It scalds your tongue, but you drink it fast, letting the heat wake you from the inside out. You stand near the fire, warming your hands while watching the light grow on the horizon. The prairie is waking up too. A few birds call out. The cattle, over 2,000 head, are already stirring in the distance, their low, mournful voices blending with the wind. Your horse is picketed nearby, dozing lightly with one hip cocked. You've ridden him every day for 3 weeks. He knows your weight, your habits, your voice. You'll brush him down soon, check his hooves, and saddle up for another long day of slow-moving dust and sun. The trail boss's voice slices through the morning air. Let's move, boys. Those cows won't walk themselves. You finish your coffee, scrape the bottom of the cup with your finger, and lick it clean. There's no waste out here. Everything is used. Everything is earned. You roll up your blanket, tie it with practiced ease, and strap it behind your saddle. The motions are automatic now. You could do them in your sleep, and sometimes it feels like you are. Breakfast is beans. You eat it standing, the plate hot in your gloved hand. The taste doesn't matter. What matters is the warmth, the weight of food in your belly to keep you upright for the hours ahead. You don't speak much during breakfast. Most cowboys don't. Words are saved for important things, directions, warnings, trouble. Out here, quiet is a kind of respect. You mount up slowly, one foot in the stirrup, then swing your leg over and settle into the saddle. Your horse snorts and shifts his weight, as ready as you are. The herd is moving now, slow, lumbering, deliberate. Dust already rises with each hoofstep. The first sunbeams strike the open land, painting it in gold and shadows. You begin to ride, your scarf pulled over your mouth, hat low against the sun. Another day begins. The same trail, the same dust, the same ache in your back and grit in your teeth. And yet, as your horse finds his pace and the land stretches out before you, there's something else too. A strange kind of peace. The silence between hoofbeats. The warmth of sun on your sleeve. The creak of leather and the smell of sweat and sagebrush. The knowledge that you are where you are supposed to be, doing what you were meant to do, even if it's hard, even if it's thankless, even if no one else will ever understand it. You ride in a line with 15 other men. Some younger, some older. None of them strangers, even if you don't know their real names. On the trail, everyone's name is a story or a joke. One man's called Limp. Another goes by Hog. One tall kid they call Whispers hasn't said more than 10 words in 2 weeks, but he rides like the wind and has a smile like a coyote. There are no uniforms, no ranks, just horses, saddles, dust, and cattle. And the sun, always the sun. It climbs higher and the heat begins. The sweat comes next, followed by thirst, followed by silence. By midday, your lips are cracked again. You sip from your canteen, warm water that tastes faintly of metal and leather. It helps, barely. Still you're right. Because there's nothing else to do. And because this is the job. The sun is high now. Not quite at its peak, but close enough to feel like it's burning a hole through your hat. Heat rises from the prairie in waves, shimmering the air and blurring the horizon. Your shirt clings to your back. Every movement sends a fresh trickle of sweat running down your spine, only for it to dry moments later in the scorching wind. This is the worst part of the day. Not because it's hardest, not yet. That comes later, when the miles pile on. But now is when the trail seems longest. When the silence grows heavy. When every sound, creaking leather, hooves dragging in dry dirt, flies buzzing around your face, seems amplified by the emptiness. There's no shade out here. Not for miles. No trees, no cover, not even a good rock to crouch behind. Just low grass, dry and pale, stretching out like an endless rug of straw. It crunches under the hooves of the herd, flattened and dusty. The cattle move slowly. Big, slow, dumb creatures with ribs you can count and horns that could skewer a man clean through. They grunt, they snort, they stamp the ground, but they keep walking. That's all they ever do, walk, eat, walk again. They don't care if you're tired. They don't care if you're hot. They just keep going. And so do you. There's no real break for lunch on a drive. Nobody stops. You eat in the saddle, if you're lucky enough to have something left in your pockets. You reach in and pull out a strip of jerky. Tough, dry, and salty. Tastes like leather dipped in seawater. But it's food. It keeps your jaw working. It keeps your mind distracted from the heat. Beside you, another cowboy shifts in his saddle and spits into the dirt. Feels like the devil's breathing down my neck, he mutters, not to you in particular. You grunt in agreement. No words needed. You pull your bandana higher over your nose. Dust coats everything, your mouth, your eyelashes, the creases in your shirt. The wind doesn't help. It doesn't cool. It just moves the dust around, shoving it deeper into every fold of cloth and skin. Your horse snorts and twitches his ears, annoyed by the flies. You pat his neck gently, fingers brushing across sun-warmed hide. He's a good animal. Steady, sure-footed. Not the fastest, but smart enough to know how to avoid the ruts, how to sense a snake, how to hold back just enough so he can keep going all day. You rely on him more than you care to admit. Without him, you'd be walking. And nobody walks out here. Somewhere up ahead, the trail boss raises his hand. The whole outfit slows, then begins to veer slightly to the east. A creek. You can smell it before you see it. Wet grass, mud, the faint, sweet tang of water in a dry land. Relief washes over you. Even a short break by water is a gift. The cattle sense it too. Their pace quickens. A few push forward, eager for a drink. The cowboys move to flank them, to prevent a stampede. No one speaks, but the horses respond to gentle tugs, soft whistles, body language shaped by habit and need. And then, there it is. A thin silver ribbon cutting across the land. Not wide, but deep enough to soak boots, to soothe parched tongues. You lead the herd in carefully, 2 or 3 rows at a time. Some of the younger steers get skittish, balking at the edge. Others plunge in too fast and slip. You stay ready, hand near your rope, hand nearer your revolver. It's not the cattle you fear. Not really. It's the possibility that one of them panics, turns, runs. One cow bolts, the others follow, and just like that, you've got a 1,000-pound wave of muscle and horns crashing through your camp. But not today. Today they drink calmly. Today the creek is merciful. You let your horse drink too. He pushes his nose into the water with a satisfied grunt. You splash some across his neck, then on your own face. It stings where your skin is sunburned, but it cools your blood just enough. You slide off your saddle and stretch your legs. It's a luxury you don't always get. The ground is softer here, grass greener. You walk a few paces along the bank, roll your shoulders, and take another swig from your canteen, refilled now with water that still tastes like dirt and river rock. Behind you, the cook's wagon lurches into view. Cookie doesn't look happy. He never does. But he'll stop here, make camp for a few hours, maybe heat up some beans or biscuits if you're lucky. You find a spot to sit, still in the saddle but slack, letting your body rest without fully disengaging. Even when you stop moving, you never truly relax. Not on the trail. One noise, one cow bellowing too loud, one sudden splash in the creek, and the calm breaks. A young steer coughs. You glance over. Just a cough. You relax again. You breathe in the smell of horses, sweat, leather, and wild sage. You've come to love it, even if it clings to your clothes for weeks. It's real. There's nothing artificial about it. Out here, everything is raw and earned. Some of the boys are already dozing in their saddles, heads nodding forward, hats tipped low. Others smoke thin hand-rolled cigarettes, their faces hollow and quiet. No one jokes. No one sings. It's too hot for music, too dry for laughter. You rest. You wait. The sun begins its long descent. This is the midpoint, the stillness between labor and exhaustion. And all too soon it will be over. By late afternoon, the light begins to change. The heat, while still fierce, starts to ease. Shadows stretch longer. The land softens, colors warming from pale yellow to dusky orange. And with that change, the camp comes alive again. Men rouse from their quiet slumps. Horses are brushed down and saddled once more. Boots are tightened, canteens refilled, and the trail boss begins barking orders in a gravel-lined voice. The herd stirs too, restless and slow to gather. They're tired, same as you. But there's still distance to cover before night falls. Today's goal lies on the other side of the river, and that means pushing the cattle across before dark. River crossings are never simple. They're dangerous, messy, and unpredictable. A sudden current, a frightened steer, or a weak footing can spell disaster, for man or beast. But it must be done. There's no trail without water, and this river is the only source for miles. You mount up again, your thighs already sore from the morning ride. Your hands find the reins, moving with the same instinct as a blacksmith reaching for his hammer. Your horse flicks his ears and responds to the light pressure of your heels. He's tired too, but alert. The chuck wagon takes a longer route upstream toward the shallows. It's too heavy to cross where the herd will. Cookie shouts something at you as he passes, but the wind snatches the words away. Soon, you reach the edge of the water. It glints like hammered silver in the low light. It's not wide, but it moves fast, faster than it looks. The trail boss doesn't hesitate. He motions forward, his horse splashing into the current. One by one, other cowboys follow, riding along the flanks of the herd to keep the animals from bunching up or drifting downstream. You ease your horse forward. The moment his front hooves enter the water, he snorts and hesitates, muscles tightening beneath you. You lean forward, whisper low. "Easy, boy. You got this." He takes another step, then another. Water swirls around his knees, then his belly. You're in. The herd follows, hooves churning up mud. Cows low nervously. One young steer slips and stumbles, legs flailing. Two men shout, angling their horses to block its path until it regains footing. A group of longhorns breaks left, pushing too close together. One of them trips and pulls two others into a messy cluster. But they're strong swimmers. They scramble back, nostrils flaring, and push ahead. The current's stronger here. You feel it against your horse's sides, pulling like a live thing. You shift your weight forward, gripping with your legs. Halfway through, your heart rate spikes. A log floats past too close. Your horse's footing slips briefly, then recovers. You inhale sharply, pulse pounding in your ears. The far bank comes into view, a gentle rise of gravel and soft grass. The scent of damp soil and wet vegetation fills your nose. Your horse, sensing the end, pushes harder. His ears prick forward. His pace quickens. And then you're climbing. Water drips from saddle leather. Your boots are soaked through. The river is behind you. You made it. Your horse paws at the ground, tossing his head as if proud. You pat his neck, murmuring thanks. He deserves it. That crossing could have ended differently. It has for others. You know stories. Men pulled under, cattle swept away, horses injured beyond use. But not today. The herd follows, hooves squelching in mud, wet hides glistening. The cowboys begin to reform the group, spreading out along the edges to keep them moving toward the clearing up ahead. An open field, shaded on one side by a line of cottonwoods, soft under hoof and perfect for bedding down. As the sun kisses the horizon, you reach the night's campsite. Men dismount. Horses are unsaddled, rubbed down, and turned out to graze. Bedrolls are unrolled again, this time with a little more care. After a river crossing, everyone wants a dry patch of ground. You strip off your wet boots and socks, setting them near the fire to dry. Your toes feel like ice. You flex them slowly, cursing under your breath. It'll take hours to warm back up. Cookie is already clanging pans. The smell of beans and bacon wafts into the evening air. Simple, but after the river, it smells like a feast. You line up with the others, holding your tin plate out with a grunt. He slaps food onto it without looking, already dishing the next. You eat slowly, legs stretched out, eyes on the fire. The sky above deepens to indigo. Stars begin to appear. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote yips. The herd murmurs quietly as it beds down, the cattle finally still. You clean your plate with a scrap of biscuit, hand it back to Cookie, and gather your gear. Your spot is a small rise above the camp, dry, with a clear view of the herd. You spread your blanket, use your saddle for a pillow, and lay down with your revolver close and your boots within reach. This is life on the trail. Not glamorous, not loud, but real. You stare up at the sky, and for a moment, you feel something ancient stir within you. A connection to men who crossed this land before there were roads. To animals born under stars and driven by instinct. To earth and dust and sweat and effort. You made it through another day. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. The fire crackles gently, its light casting long shadows that dance across the dirt. Most of the men are settling in now. Some are already asleep, cocooned in blankets, their boots positioned just within reach. A few others linger near the flames, speaking softly, their words barely audible above the ambient noise of the night. An occasional rustle in the grass, the low grumble of cattle, the sharp click of hooves as a horse shifts its weight. You're not one of the lucky ones tonight. You've drawn second watch. That means you'll sleep a few hours now and be woken just before midnight. You'll patrol the herd until almost dawn, keeping an eye out for coyotes, rustlers, stampedes, or anything that might break the fragile peace of a cowboy camp. It's not the worst watch. First watch is the hardest, coming right after dinner when your belly is full and your eyes are heavy. Third watch is the coldest, when the air dips below freezing and everything, including your thoughts, moves slower. But second watch is lonely. Everyone else is asleep, and there's nothing to keep you company but the stars. You wrap your blanket tighter and close your eyes. It doesn't take long for your body to begin slipping into sleep. You're sore, you're full, and you know every minute of rest matters. You fade fast, carried down by exhaustion into a heavy, dreamless void. It feels like only seconds later when a boot nudges your side. You groan softly and open one eye. A shadow stands over you, whispers, the quiet kid with the sun-scorched cheeks. He nods and moves on. His watch is over. You sit up slowly. The fire has burned low. Most of the coals are deep red, with only a few small flames licking at the edges. The night is silent, but not still. There's a breeze now, soft and dry, and the temperature has dropped sharply. You pull on your coat and boots, grab your hat, and reach for your rifle. Your revolver is already holstered. You don't need much light to find your way. The moon is high, casting a pale silver glow over the camp. The cattle are dark shapes on the open plain, scattered and unmoving. A few chew lazily. Most are lying down, their massive sides rising and falling in slow, steady rhythm. You begin your patrol. There's a path you've walked before, a loose circuit around the herd. You walk it again, boots crunching softly in the dirt, breath clouding in the air. Your horse is nearby, tethered to a low branch. You'll mount up later, but for now, you prefer to walk. It keeps you warmer, and there's something grounding about feeling the earth beneath your feet. The first part of your watch is easy. The camp is calm. The animals are still. You move slowly, scanning the shadows for movement. The wind stirs the grass. An owl calls from somewhere distant. You reach the far edge of the herd and pause. From here, the sky seems impossibly big. It stretches in every direction, filled with more stars than you can count. The Milky Way cuts a shimmering path across the heavens, and for a moment, you just stare. You forget the cold. You forget the dust. You forget your aching legs. This sky, this silence, is part of what keeps you coming back. You hum softly under your breath. A cowboy's tune. Just enough noise to let the herd know you're there. Not too loud. Just enough to soothe. That's the trick of night watch. Don't surprise the cattle. Don't sneak up. Let them know where you are. Your presence calms them. A steady sound, a familiar scent, a quiet figure moving through the dark. If they know you're out there, they sleep easier. And if they sleep easier, so do you. You mount your horse for the second half of the watch. He's warm and solid beneath you, shifting slightly as you settle in. He knows the job too. He's done it as many times as you have. You guide him with your knees, letting the reins hang loose. He walks slow and steady around the herd, hooves muffled by the dirt. You doze lightly in the saddle, eyes open but thoughts drifting. Memories float through your mind. Home, a letter you haven't written, the sound of your mother's voice, the last time you saw real rain. You think of a creek you crossed 2 summers ago, the one with the cleanest water you've ever tasted. You think of a girl in Fort Worth with hair the color of straw and a temper to match. Time stretches. Eventually, the first light of dawn touches the edge of the world. It's soft at first, a faint graying of the horizon, like the night exhaling. Then it grows, a warm blush spreading across the sky. The stars blink out one by one. The wind stills. You circle the herd once more. Everything is as it should be. No noise. No movement. No threat. Relief washes over you. Not joy, not triumph. Just relief. The kind that settles in your bones, quiet and deep. The other cowboys begin to stir. You ride back toward camp, where Cookie is already up, muttering to himself as he stokes the fire and prepares the coffee. You dismount and stretch your legs, stifling a yawn. Your horse gets a pat and a nod. He did well. You pour yourself a cup of the thick, bitter brew and sip slowly. The warmth cuts through the cold. It burns your throat slightly, but that's the point. It pulls you back into your body, back into the day. You survive the night. And now, another day begins. You'd think, after a night of silence under the stars, that the sunrise would bring some peace. But it doesn't. Not really. Not on the trail. The cattle are awake now. So are the men. And just like that, the quiet spell of the night is broken, replaced by the rhythmic clatter of hooves, the dry scrape of boots on gravel, the sharp curses of tired cowboys trying to herd half-wild animals back into motion. You rub your eyes with the back of your glove and finish the last drop of coffee. It's bitter, metallic, and twice boiled, but it keeps your legs moving and your thoughts clear. You hand Cookie your cup without a word. He grunts in return. That's as friendly as either of you are feeling. You check your gear, revolver holstered, rifle tied down, bedroll packed and lashed tight behind your saddle, boots dry enough to wear, hat still holding together after the river crossing. You're ready. The sun is climbing fast, and with it, the temperature. There's no transition out here, no gentle drift into warmth. 1 minute the air bites, the next it bakes. The light gets sharp and bright, turning the world into gold and shadow, with no room for in-between. You swing into the saddle and begin to ride. The cattle are moving slow. They always do in the mornings, especially after a night spent near water. They're sluggish, reluctant. A few try to drift off course, heading toward better grass. But you and the others keep them in line, riding low and slow, whistling and shouting as needed. It's not glamorous work. There's no drama in it. No heroics. It's just hours of moving forward, watching, guiding, adjusting, preventing problems before they start. It's repetition, routine, restraint. But that doesn't mean it's easy. As the morning deepens, the sun begins to press down like a weight. The dust rises thick and clinging. It gets in your mouth, coats your tongue, dries your eyes. Your scarf helps, but not much. You've learned not to complain. Everyone's in the same misery, and no one's interested in hearing about yours. You pass the time counting steps, watching the sway of your horse's ears, tracking the subtle changes in the land. The grass grows a little taller here. A few scrubby trees begin to appear, thin and twisted by the wind. You chew a piece of jerky. It's hard as iron and just as tasty, but it gives your jaw something to do and keeps the hunger at bay. You'll need real food by nightfall, but until then, this is enough. Beside you, an older cowboy named Jesse mutters, "Feels like we're moving through soup made of dust." You nod. No argument there. He squints up at the sky. Storms coming. Heat like this don't end without a fight. You glance around. The horizon looks clear, but Jesse's been on more drives than anyone else in the outfit. If he says weather's coming, you believe him. Midday arrives like a hammer. The cattle slow further, tongues lolling, ribs heaving. You pour a little water from your canteen into your hand and rub it on your horse's neck. He flinches slightly, then leans into your touch. You're not the only one who's tired. There's no stopping, no resting. You keep moving because you have to, because if the herd stops for too long, they'll scatter or grow stubborn. Then the real work begins. So you keep riding, legs stiff, spine aching, head throbbing with the constant sun. By afternoon, the real danger starts. You see it begin with a few steers near the back, heads tossing, tails twitching, eyes rolling wide. Something has them nervous. A noise, a scent, maybe nothing at all. But panic spreads fast among cattle. One starts to run, and the rest follow. Stampede. You react without thinking. You and 3 others ride hard to the rear, shouting, waving hats, trying to cut them off before it starts. Your horse lunges forward, muscles bunching, hooves flying. You draw your rope and ready it, just in case. But you're lucky. This time, it stops before it begins. The lead steer halts, snorting, eyes wild, but doesn't bolt. The others hesitate, then settle. You circle them once, slowly, speaking in a low, steady voice. They calm. Disaster avoided. This time. You ride back toward the main group, heart still racing. Jesse rides up beside you, nods once, and says, "Close one." That's all there is to say. The rest of the afternoon passes in a blur. You move. You shout. You nudge and guide. You count the herd over and over. You check hooves for stones, watch the sky for clouds, and drink from your canteen sparingly. When the sun begins to sink, you feel it before you see it. The temperature shifts just slightly. The wind picks up. The shadows lengthen, and something inside you loosens. Evening. Relief. The herd slows on its own now, tired and willing to stop. The trail boss calls for camp. The cook's wagon lumbers forward, already sending up the smell of salt pork and beans. You dismount, legs stiff, knees cracking, and lead your horse to water. You rub him down carefully, talking softly as you work. He's earned it. You both have. Dinner is quiet. No one speaks much. Just the scrape of tin plates and the sighs of men who've given everything today and will do it again tomorrow. You finish your meal, stare into the fire for a while, then move away toward your bedroll. The ground is hard. The blanket is thin. Your boots are dusty, your face sticky with sweat. And yet, when you lie back and look up at the darkening sky, you feel something close to contentment. Not comfort, not happiness, but the solid satisfaction of having endured. You did your job. You held the line. You kept the herd together. You survived the longest day. Tomorrow, it begins again. But for now, the stars are rising, the air is cool, and your body is ready for sleep. It starts with silence. Not the peaceful kind you get at midnight around a low campfire, but a heavy, loaded silence. One that settles over the land like a warning. Even the cattle notice it, ears twitching, heads lifting, muscles tense. Then comes the smell. Not just dust or sweat or the earthy perfume of cattle and horses. This is sharper, metallic, ominous. The kind of scent that prickles the back of your neck and makes your fingers twitch without knowing why. Storm's coming. Jesse was right. You wake before the sun, before Cookie even has a chance to stoke the fire. There's no birdsong this morning. No wind. The air feels trapped, held in place like a held breath. You swing your legs out of your bedroll and feel the ground beneath your palms. It's warm. Too warm. And too still. The kind of stillness that can split apart in an instant. The first rumble of thunder comes low and long, so far off you feel it in your chest before you hear it properly. You start moving fast. No one waits for orders on a morning like this. Cowboys scatter with silent urgency. Horses are saddled in half the usual time. Gear is lashed tight. Rifles are checked, ropes coiled and ready. The herd is already uneasy. A few of them pace near the edges, tails swatting, eyes wide and white. Stampede is a real possibility. The trail boss barks short commands. Double flank. Push east. Watch that riverbed. You're already mounted, scarf tied up, hat cinched tight. The wind hits seconds later, fast and sudden, whipping across the plain like a slap. Dust lifts into the air, blinding and biting. Then, lightning. It arcs across the sky in a jagged flash, white and furious. The thunder that follows is like a gunshot echoing off the earth. And the herd moves. First one steer. Then 5. Then 50. They run. And the world becomes chaos. You ride hard alongside 2 other cowboys, trying to angle your horses toward the front of the stampede. The sound is deafening, hooves pounding like war drums, 1,000 animals crashing through the dust and grass. The air is full of noise, movement, fear. Your horse stretches beneath you, muscles straining. You shout, wave your hat, do anything you can to turn the herd, to curve them into a circle before they destroy themselves or each other. It takes minutes, or maybe hours. You can't tell. But slowly, eventually, the herd begins to curve, following its own motion until the stampede becomes a spiral. Not perfect, not safe, but manageable. You're covered in sweat and dirt. Your throat is raw. Your eyes sting. But you're alive. And the herd is intact. You ride the edge of the circle, slowing your horse, guiding him through the bodies, calming the cattle with low whistles and murmured curses. Their sides heave, steam rising off their backs. And then rain. It doesn't come all at once. Just a few drops at first, big and heavy. Then more, and more, until the sky cracks wide open and the heavens pour everything they've got onto the trail. You're soaked in seconds. Your coat helps, but not much. Water runs down your back, into your boots, through your gloves. The ground turns to mud beneath your horse's hooves. The smell of wet leather, wet wool, and panic rises all around. But no one stops. You push the herd east as ordered, away from the low ground. Flash floods come fast out here, and the trail boss isn't about to lose men or cattle to a sudden river. The rain falls harder. Visibility drops to almost nothing. You can barely see the cowboy riding 10 feet beside you. Everything becomes sound. The splatter of water, the slosh of hooves, the high-pitched whine of wind cutting through your ears. Still you write, this is the job. Eventually, after what feels like a lifetime, the trail boss signals for a halt. You find a patch of slightly higher ground, a rise above a dry creek. The herd settles. Slowly, uneasily. The cowboys do too. You dismount and lead your horse to a small patch of grass, tie him loosely, and pat his soaked neck. He's trembling. So are you. Not from cold, but from adrenaline. No one talks much. No one has the energy. You help Cookie get a fire going, barely. The rain makes it difficult, but with enough kindling, cursing, and a generous splash of lamp oil, flames sputter to life. The coffee that comes from that fire tastes like mud and smoke. It's the best thing you've had all day. You huddle under your slicker, wrapped in a damp blanket, boots off, revolver close. Around you, men do the same, silent shapes in the gray morning light, steam rising off their clothes and breath. This is the other side of the West. Not the gunfights, not the saloons, but the storm, the chaos, the survival. You close your eyes. The rain is slowing now. The wind is gentler, and the cattle are quiet again. You made it. Another disaster weathered. Another day endured. Another night survived. And tomorrow, it all begins again. The storm is gone. By morning, the skies have cleared. The air feels freshly scrubbed, carrying the sharp scent of wet earth and distant sagebrush. The world sparkles, in a way, if you're the kind of man who still notices beauty after days of riding with wet boots and blistered thighs. The ground, though, is a mess. What was hard dirt is now slick mud. What were ruts are now trenches. The trail is slower, harder, messy. The cattle hate it. So do the horses. So do the men. But there's no choice. You move anyway. The trail boss doesn't say much. He never does, especially after a night like that. But he rides with his back straighter than usual, and that's warning enough. You ride out around midday, the herd stretching long and slow behind you. The sun is out again, but it doesn't dry the land as quickly as you'd like. Mud cakes the hooves of your horse, clings to the hems of your pants, splashes up onto your saddle horn. And the land is changing. You notice it first in the grass, sparser now, shorter, dotted with thorny bushes and dry, gray clumps. Then the trees disappear. The sky feels bigger, the wind harsher. You're riding into a lonelier place. This is no man's land. No ranches. No water towers. No fences. Just wide open prairie that doesn't care who you are or how long you've been out here. It's wild. It's empty. It's free, but not safe. Used to be Comanche country, Jesse mutters beside you as if reading your thoughts. Still is if you ask the land. You glance at him, but say nothing. He's not wrong. No one talks much today. The laughter that sometimes finds its way into camp is gone. This stretch of trail has a way of choking conversation. There's something about the quiet here, not peaceful, but watching, as if the land itself has eyes. The wind picks up in the afternoon. Not enough to spook the cattle, but enough to keep your coat flapping and your lips dry. It carries dust and silence in equal measure. You stop once to check your horse's hooves. One of them has a stone lodged in the frog. You kneel, boots sinking into soft dirt, and pry it loose with the tip of your knife. He snorts and stomps. You mutter something soothing, wipe your blade on your pants, and remount. The herd stretches to the horizon now. You ride point for a while, out ahead, scouting the terrain. It's all the same. Shrubs. Flat, empty land with no cover and no relief. But there's something strange ahead. A shape, no, several shapes, appear in the distance. Unmoving. You signal the trail boss and ride closer. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Bleached white, some still partially buried. Skulls, ribs, vertebrae. Cattle, most of them. A few horses. You've heard stories about this place. A failed drive years ago. A storm hit. Then a sickness. Then panic. The herd scattered and the cowboys followed. Some never made it back. You don't linger. You turn your horse gently and ride around the bones, giving them space. No one speaks. The trail boss just tips his hat and spits into the dust. This land remembers. You press on, the sun slipping lower now. There's no shelter, no creek, no good place to camp. Eventually, the trail boss calls for a stop anyway. You find a patch of firmer ground, just enough for a fire. The cook sets up without complaint, but the mood is heavy. Men roll out their bedrolls and clean their rifles. No one takes off their boots. You eat in silence. The wind carries the sound of coyotes howling somewhere to the west. Closer than you'd like. The herd stirs uneasily. You volunteer for watch. Not because you're not tired, you are, but because you'd rather stay moving, thinking, listening. As the others drift off into uneasy sleep, you ride the perimeter again. You hum, soft and low, letting the cattle know you're out there. Your horse walks slowly, his ears twitching at every sound. The stars are sharp tonight, cold and clear, the kind of stars that cut through you, reminding you just how far from anything you really are. You reach the edge of the trail and stop. The land stretches out before you, flat, endless, and empty. It could swallow a man whole, and it has. But for now, you're still here, still standing, still riding, still part of something ancient, something real. The deeper into no man's land you ride, the stranger the world begins to feel. There's no clear marker for when it happens. No ridge you cross, no line in the dirt. Just a slow shift, like the land is shedding its skin, revealing something older underneath. Something that doesn't belong to maps or ranchers or railroads. It starts with dreams. Bad ones. You don't usually dream on the trail. You're too tired. Sleep comes heavy, dreamless, like a rock tossed into a well. But out here, you dream. Everyone does. One night you see fire, grass burning around the herd, the sky filled with smoke, cattle bellowing as flames lick at their hides. Another night it's something else. A man in black, riding a pale horse. You can't see his face, but you feel his eyes. You wake with your heart hammering and your shirt damp with sweat, even though the night is cold. Others are having them too. You hear whispers around the fire. Didn't sleep right. Something out there last night. You hear horses? I swear I heard hooves. No one says it outright. No one mentions the stories. The ones every cowboy knows, but no one repeats during daylight. The ghost riders, spirits of cowboys who died on the trail and never made it home. They say they ride at night, circling the living, trying to lead them off the path and into the dark. You laugh it off, of course, but not too loudly, and never when you're alone. On the fourth day in no man's land, something happens. It's just past dawn. The sky is pale and pink, the air still cool. You and Jesse are riding flank, checking the outer edge of the herd when you spot it. A trail. Faint, half swallowed by wind and time. You stop your horse and study it. Jesse squints, then nods slowly. Old trail, he says. Wagon ruts. Not ours. The tracks disappear into the horizon, veering slightly off the main route. The trail boss comes up and you show him. He stares at it for a long time, then grunts. Could be the old Fort Hayes run, he mutters. Died out when the fort closed down. Wagon trains used to run it. No one suggests following it. So, do you feel it calling? That night, around the fire, someone tells the story. It starts simple, just a mention of the lost trail and the riders who never turn back. But it grows. Someone says they know a man who saw a cowboy riding in the fog, drifting across the plains with empty eyes. Someone else swears they passed a grave out here once, marked with nothing but a horseshoe and a rope tied in a loop. Whole outfit vanished, except one man, Jesse says, poking the fire with a stick. He came out white-haired and quiet. Said the land swallowed them. Never said how. You go to bed early that night, but you don't sleep much. You hear things. Hoofbeats, soft and distant, like someone circling the camp. A rope swinging. A faint cough. A voice, low and cracked, murmuring your name. You sit up. Reach for your revolver. Nothing there. Just wind in the grass. Just the stars. You lie back down, eyes open, listening. The next morning, Cookie says his horse was sweating when he went to saddle it. But it wasn't hot. Hadn't been ridden. Like something rode it without waking me, he says, voice hushed. That day, you lose part of the trail. Not for long. Maybe an hour. But the herd begins drifting and the landmarks shift. The trail boss curses under his breath, checking the sun, scanning the horizon. You ever feel like something's trying to push us off course? One of the younger hands mutters. You don't answer, because the truth is you do. It's subtle. A fence post that wasn't there yesterday. A dry creek that bends the wrong way. A patch of land that feels familiar, even though you've never seen it before. Late that evening, you spot a rider on the far ridge. Alone. Motionless. You blink, and he's gone. You don't mention it. But that night, you tie your horse closer. Load your rifle. Keep your boots on. And when you finally fall asleep, it's with your hand resting on your gun and your heart still listening for hoofbeats. You don't know what's out there. But something is. And it's watching. He appeared on the horizon just after dawn. At first, you thought he was another ghost. Just a shadow moving through the morning haze, flickering between the rising heat waves. But as the sun climbed, the shape resolved into something solid, horse, rider, gear. A lone figure headed toward your outfit at a steady, deliberate pace. The whole camp stopped moving when they saw him. No one said anything, but every man turned to watch. The fire still crackled. The cattle still shifted and huffed. But the only real sound was the approaching clop of hoofbeats. He didn't wave, didn't shout a greeting. He rode right up to the trail boss, dismounted in one fluid motion, and offered a simple nod. Name Saul. That was all. Just Saul. He wasn't young, but he wasn't old either. Mid-40s maybe. His beard was neat but dusty, his coat torn but patched with care. His horse was lean and rangy, the kind that had seen better days but still had grit in its step. His saddle was worn smooth, almost polished by time and use. He didn't carry much. No pack mule. No supplies. Just a rifle, a sidearm, and a bedroll tied tight behind the cantle. Been riding the old trail from Dodge, he said, looking to join a drive. His voice was calm, steady, weathered, like the wind had rubbed the edges off over time. The trail boss looked him up and down. You ride clean. Clean enough. What do you know? Enough to stay alive. That was it. Saul joined the outfit. No one objected. That wasn't our way. A man who could ride and didn't complain was always welcome. But something about him put the others on edge. He never said much. Didn't laugh. Didn't curse. Didn't spit or chew or smoke. He just rode. And worked. And watched. That was the part that stuck with you, the way he watched. Not people really. The land. The sky. The shadows at the edge of camp. He had a habit of turning suddenly, eyes fixed on something far off, like he was listening for something only he could hear. One night around the fire, you caught him staring at the stars. Not just glancing. Staring. Like he recognized them. Like he was reading them. "You know how to read the sky?" you asked, half joking. He didn't laugh. Just nodded. "Better than I read men." Then he rolled out his blanket and lay down, still fully dressed, rifle across his chest. That became a pattern. He'd ride his watch without a word, always volunteering for the loneliest shifts. He kept to the edges of the herd, never close to the cook fire unless it was time to eat. He never took second helpings. Never asked questions. Never shared stories. But he noticed everything. One day, a young steer came up lame. Before the trail boss could even give an order, Saul was already riding toward it, rope in hand. Another time, when a thunderhead appeared far to the north, Saul rode back from flank and told the boss we'd need to veer east, 3 hours before the wind shifted. No one said it aloud, but some of the men began looking to Saul before the trail boss. The boss didn't like that. Not one bit. But what could he say? Saul wasn't disrespectful. He just was. Present. Quiet. Always one step ahead. Then came the night of the fire. A flash of lightning lit up the plain around midnight. One of the dry bushes near the outer edge of the herd caught flame, then another. The wind, cruel and swift, pushed the blaze inward. You woke to shouting. Cattle screaming. Men stumbling for boots and rifles. And in the middle of it, Saul, already mounted, already riding a slow, deliberate circle around the herd, speaking in a low voice. You don't know what he said. You don't even know if he said real words. But the cattle listened. They didn't panic. They held together. The fire burned fast, furious, then out. And the herd lived. The next morning, the trail boss called Saul over. "You some kind of shaman?" he asked, only half joking. "Nope," Saul said. "Just listen better than most." You found yourself riding next to him a day later, curiosity chewing at your gut. "You been with many outfits?" you asked. He nodded. "A few." "You always ride alone?" Another nod. "Why?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Easier to hear the world when no one's talking over it." You didn't know what to say. So you didn't say anything. The rest of the drive that day passed in silence. But not an uncomfortable one. A quiet that felt chosen. Later that night, Saul vanished from camp. Just walked off. No one saw where he went. No one heard him return. But at dawn, he was there again, packing his gear, brushing his horse, ready to ride. Someone joked that he didn't sleep, just turned into smoke and wandered with the ghosts. No one laughed, because deep down, no one was sure he wasn't right. The fire hadn't spread far, but it had left its mark. By morning, a quarter-mile stretch of prairie was charred black, bushes reduced to twisted ash, grass burned down to raw earth. Smoke still clung to the air, thin and acrid, lacing every breath with the scent of scorched dirt and old fear. The herd was intact. Miraculously. Not a single steer lost. But something else had changed. The men were quiet that morning, not trail-tired quiet, but shaken. Even Jesse, who'd seen more cattle drives than most of you had birthdays, walked with a slower step and eyes that lingered a little too long on the horizon. No one wanted to talk about what they'd seen. The shadows. The way the fire had moved, not wildly, but in long, slow sweeps, as if guided by an invisible hand. How the cattle, normally the first to panic, had stood still as stones. How Saul had ridden through it all like it didn't matter. How'd he do that? Someone whispered over breakfast, barely audible above the sizzle of bacon grease. That weren't natural. Cookie spat into the dirt. Neither's ridin' 50 miles alone with no water and no map. But he did that too. The conversation ended there. You saddled up without the usual chatter. Even the trail boss didn't yell as much. The fire had shaken his confidence. Everyone could feel it. He was still in charge, officially, but it was Saul the men watched now. You rode out mid-morning, picking a careful path around the scorched area. That's when you saw it, half buried in the soot, sticking up from the ground like a jagged tooth. A piece of wood. No, more than that. A post. You pulled your horse to a stop and dismounted. The others rode on it first until they noticed you weren't moving. Then a few circled back. You knelt in the ash, brushed it away with gloved fingers. More wood. Blackened, splintered, but unmistakable. A fence post. No ranch out here, Jesse muttered. Ain't for 200 miles. Old trail, maybe? Someone offered. An outpost. You kept digging. Soon you uncovered a coil of rusted wire, tangled and charred. A small length of broken fence line. And beside it, something stranger, what looked like a metal plate. Burned nearly beyond recognition. You picked it up, turned it in your hands. Etched into the surface, barely legible. CF 1863, property of the Confederation Drive. The name meant nothing to you. But Saul was behind you now, watching. Confederation Drive, he said softly. They tried to run herds through here during the war. Avoided Union territory. Most of them didn't make it. You looked up at him. How do you know? He didn't answer. You dropped the plate and stood. The others looked unsettled. Let's ride, the trail boss said. His voice was thin. You mounted again and moved on, the discovery lingering like smoke in your mind. That night, the wind blew hard, scraping through the sparse trees like dry laughter. The cattle wouldn't settle. They shifted, groaned, stamped their hooves. You rode watch with Jesse. Neither of you spoke much. Halfway through the shift, he said, I remember that name. You turned. What name? Confederation Drive. My pa told me about it when I was a boy. Said they tried to cross this plain with 1,000 head, back in '63. Disappeared. Whole outfit. All of it. No trace. You nodded slowly. We just found their fence. Jesse didn't respond. He just spit and rode on. At breakfast the next day, Saul didn't eat. He stood apart, staring at the horizon like he was waiting for something. Or someone. Storm's comin', he said quietly. The sky was clear. But no one doubted him. Later, as you were packing your bedroll, you found something in the ashes where the fire had burned. A single silver spur, blackened but intact, buried shallowly in the dirt. You turned it in your hand, feeling the weight of history, the ghosts riding just out of sight. The fire had passed, but it had uncovered more than just soil. It had stirred something deeper, something that had been waiting. By the next morning, the sky had changed. Not dramatically, not yet. But the blue seemed duller, the edges of the clouds more jagged, torn like paper left in the rain. The sun came up hesitant, hiding behind layers of haze that hadn't been there the day before. Saul had said it, storm's comin', and now everyone could feel it. The outfit moved slower that day, not from laziness, but from a kind of quiet dread. Cowboys rode with eyes up, checking the sky as often as they checked the herd. The cattle were restless too, more than usual. They moaned and shifted in long, uneasy waves, snorting at shadows and twitching at wind. You knew what it meant. Every man who had spent enough time on the trail knew. Animals feel the storm before it breaks. Their bodies tune into something older, deeper. Before the sky even rolls, they know. The land here didn't help either. You were now deep into what the maps called the Thunder Plains. Flat, barren, and wide open. No shelter, no trees, no hills. Just sky above and mud below. When a storm came here, it didn't sneak in through the trees. It descended. Violent, fast, and endless. By noon, the temperature had dropped. The wind had teeth. You pulled your coat tighter, adjusted the scarf around your face. Your horse was nervous. He shifted his weight constantly, ears flicking backward at every sudden gust. The trail boss rode up, face hard. No time for stories. We push another 5 miles, then find high ground. There wasn't much debate. No one wanted to be caught in a lightning storm down in the open prairie basin. Lightning didn't just strike here. It hunted. You'd heard stories. Men turned to smoke. Cattle fried mid-step. Horses dead before they hit the ground. You kept riding. Then you saw it. Far on the horizon, a long, low shelf of cloud, dark as coal, moving like a solid wall. And beneath it, the land disappeared into a curtain of gray. Heavy and fast. You could almost hear it coming. The trail boss barked orders. Men spurred their horses into a trot. The herd moaned as it moved faster, driven by instinct more than instruction. You rode flank, pushing a tight group of 20 head, trying to keep them from scattering. And then the wind hit. Not a breeze. Not even a gust. A blast, sharp and sudden, pushing from the side like a slap from a giant's hand. It bent grass flat. It tore your hat clean off, and you only caught it by pure reflex, slapping it back down over your ears. Dust followed. It came in waves, like curtains of dry smoke. It choked your mouth, filled your nose, stung your eyes. The sky above turned yellow, then brown. The herd panicked. You saw it before you heard it. Movement, fast and sharp. A young steer bolted left. Another followed. Then 10. Then 50. Stampede. You didn't think. You couldn't think. You just rode. Your horse lunged forward, hoofs slipping in wet dirt, muscles bunching as you leaned low and drove him hard to the front of the brake. You could barely see. The air was all dust and screams. Cattle, men, wind, thunder. Thunder. The first crack tore through the sky like a rifle shot, and then the heavens opened. Rain hit in buckets, sudden and blinding. The dust turned to mud in an instant. Your horse stumbled, caught himself. You drove him forward. You weren't alone. Jesse was beside you, teeth bared against the wind. Saul, too, silent, soaked, focused, his face unreadable. Together, you angled in, turning the stampede, forcing the herd back into a circle. The rain helped now, slicking their hooves, tiring them faster. After 15 minutes, maybe 20, it was over. The cattle stood trembling, steam rising from their backs. Men sat heaving in their saddles, soaked through, eyes wide. The trail boss rode through the wreckage, counting under his breath. 3 lost, he said. Could have been 30. No one spoke. Then, thunder again, closer this time. The trail boss snapped out of it. High ground now. You moved fast, guiding the cattle toward a low ridge barely worthy of the name. But it was dry, and just tall enough to feel safer. You made camp there, barely beating the second wave of rain. Lightning flickered across the sky in jagged white veins, and thunder pounded like war drums. No one slept much that night. The fire was kept low. The cattle were clustered tight. Every man kept one eye open, one hand near his holster. You lay under your blanket, soaked to the skin, staring up at the clouds and listening to the storm rage above. You'd been on cattle drives before. You'd faced dust and thirst and river crossings. But this storm? It was different. It didn't just come at you. It watched. It waited. It tested your lines. and tomorrow it might not hold back. The storm passed by morning, but it left behind more than broken sky and soaked clothes. It left behind silence, a heavy kind, not the gentle hush of dawn or the peaceful quiet of the stars. This silence had weight. It crept into your bones, made your skin itch, made your thoughts louder than they should be. The men moved slowly, like they were made of rust. No one laughed. No one sang. The cook barely grunted when you handed him your plate. The herd, too, had changed. They were slower, less coordinated. The storm had taken something from them. A layer of instinct, maybe. Or courage. A few had bruises, limps. One had a twisted leg that would have to be put down by evening. The trail boss gathered everyone before setting out. "Short day today," he said. "We push half distance. Dry the gear. Fix what's broke." You all nodded, but no one really looked at him. All eyes drifted to Saul. He didn't speak, just saddled his horse and rode out. You followed, boots squelching in damp earth. By mid-morning, the sun was back, though the air was still thick. Your shirt stuck to your back. Every creak of the saddle felt louder than it should. Your horse snorted often, annoyed at the mud, the heat, the flies. Jesse rode beside you, chewing a stick of root tobacco. He hadn't said much in 2 days. Now he broke the silence. "This land's startin' to eat us." You didn't answer. You couldn't argue. That afternoon, it happened. It started small, just a shout, a clatter, a horse rearing up. Then a scream. You spun your horse around in time to see one of the younger hands, Caleb, on the ground, clutching his leg. His horse was bolting toward the horizon. Another man, Buckley, stood above him, rifle half raised, eyes wild. "What the hell?" Jesse muttered, kicking his horse forward. You rode in fast. Buckley was shaking, face pale. Caleb's leg was twisted, broken. "He came at me," Buckley yelled. "Said I was leading the herd into damnation." You dismounted, stepped between them. "What are you talking about?" He was hummin'. Same tune Saul hums at night. Then he started ramblin' about stars, about voices. Said the land had turned against us. Tried to yank my reins. I pushed him off. You turned to Caleb. His face was contorted in pain. I don't know," he gasped. "I ain't slept in 2 days. I thought I saw someone walkin' toward the herd." "Who?" you asked. He didn't answer. The trail boss showed up moments later. He looked at Caleb, then at Buckley. Then at you. "Ride's done for him," he said. "We'll tie a splint. Load him on the wagon." And that was that. The rest of the day passed like molasses, slow, hot, and thick with tension. That night, you sat near the fire, watching the flames twist and hiss. Saul stood a little ways off, staring up at the stars again. Same as always. Still silent. Jesse whispered, "You think he's drawing this? Like a lightning rod." You didn't answer, because part of you had begun to wonder the same. Later, as you walked the edge of camp, checking the herd before first watch, you passed Saul. He didn't look at you, just said softly, "Men break out here, not because they're weak, because the land don't care if they're strong." You stopped. "And you? Why haven't you broken?" He finally turned his head. "I already did," he said. "Long time ago." Then he turned back to the stars. You walked away, but the words followed you all the way to sleep. 3 days after Caleb's injury, the land changed again. It always did, eventually. That was the cruel trick of the trail. Just when you'd gotten used to one kind of suffering, the land served you something new. Gone were the flat, empty prairies of the Thunder Plains. In their place came rises and dips, hills that rolled like the backs of sleeping giants. The grass grew taller, coarser. Rocks poked up through the earth like teeth. You rode slower now. Not because of weariness, though that was there too, but because the land demanded it. Cattle didn't move well over uneven ground. Wagons struggled even more. And the higher you climbed, the harder the wind blew. Then, on the fourth day, you reached the canyon. It wasn't marked on any map, not that anyone had a reliable one anymore. It appeared like a tear in the world, a sudden drop in the earth that stretched for half a mile and plunged at least 50 feet down. The herd came to a stop. They didn't like it. The men didn't either. It wasn't the canyon itself, it was what was inside it. Both. Everywhere. At first you thought it was just the remains of cattle, an old herd that hadn't made it. But the longer you looked, the more wrong it felt. There were too many bones. Too varied. Not just cattle. Horses. Mules. And others. Human skulls. Ribs scattered among rusted tools, fragments of leather, shattered barrels. There were wagon wheels down there, half buried, snapped like twigs. A pistol. A child's doll, missing its head. Someone behind you whispered, "What the hell happened here?" Saul dismounted. Without a word, he walked to the edge of the canyon and knelt. The wind tugged at his coat, but he didn't move. He picked up a small, flat stone from the rim and turned it in his hand like it was an old coin. "This was a trail," he said. The trail boss stepped beside him. "There's no trail marked through here." "There was," Saul replied. "A long time ago." The boss looked uneasy. "You ever seen this before?" "No," Saul said. "But I've heard it." That was the thing about Saul. He never explained what he meant. He didn't lie. He just said enough. You dismounted too, drawn by something you couldn't name. You stepped to the edge. Looked down. The canyon didn't feel natural. It was shaped wrong. Too clean. The sides cut inward at sharp angles, like they'd been carved, not by water, but by force. The bones inside weren't scattered. They were clustered, piled in certain places, as if something, or someone, had gathered them. A chill crawled up your spine. "I don't like this," Jesse muttered behind you. "This place, it's wrong." You agreed, but no one said it aloud. The trail boss made the call to skirt it wide, 3 miles around. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He just knew. You all did. That night, no one spoke by the fire. No one joked. No one sang. Not even Cookie complained about the beans. You ate in silence, listening to the wind rush through the canyon behind you. It had a strange pitch, a hollow tone that sounded too much like breath. You lay in your bedroll with your hat over your eyes, but you didn't sleep. You couldn't. You dreamed of bones, of hands reaching up from the ravine, of a doll with empty sockets and a voice that whispered, "You passed us by." You woke at dawn in a sweat, fists clenched, heart pounding. Saul was already on his horse. He looked at you once as you mounted. Then he said, "Some trails don't die. They just wait." And then he rode on. You expected the next day to be hard. After the canyon, after the sleepless night, after the look in Saul's eyes, you expected wind, trouble, panic, maybe another stampede. But instead you got silence. Not just ordinary trail silence. This was deeper, stranger, the kind that makes even seasoned cowboys start looking over their shoulders. The morning was clear. The air was cool. The cattle moved easy, like their muscles had forgotten the stiffness of the past week. The trail rolled gently now, open and dry. Your horse walked without complaint. Even the wagon creaked less. If it had been any other day, it might have felt like a blessing. But it didn't, because something about it felt wrong. Too easy. Too quiet. Even Cookie didn't complain. Jesse rode beside you, chewing on the end of a matchstick like he always did when he was nervous. "Ever get a day like this?" he asked. You shook your head. "No," he said, answering his own question. Me neither. You passed through a narrow valley around midday. Low hills rose on both sides. It should have made the herd spook. They didn't like being boxed in, but they didn't react at all. They just walked. No flies. No coughing. No bellowing. Just hooves on dirt, like the land had laid itself flat beneath you. Around 2 o'clock, you realized you hadn't seen a single bird all day. No hawks overhead. No sparrows flitting from bush to bush. Not even a buzzard. And then you noticed something worse. You hadn't heard a single insect. Not a chirp. Not a buzz. Not a hum. Just silence. By late afternoon, every man in the outfit had noticed. No one said anything aloud, but the glances, the furrowed brows, the way they gripped reins tighter, all spoke the same language. You weren't alone in thinking it. This day was wrong. You stopped earlier than usual. The trail boss didn't explain. He just motioned toward a wide clearing and said, "We camp here." The fire was built quickly, but no one sat close to it. The warmth felt off. The wood burned too quietly. Even the crackling seemed muted, like it was happening behind a pane of glass. The cattle gathered in a loose circle, heads low. Not asleep. Just still. Too still. You ate without tasting. Beans again. Lukewarm coffee. Comfort food that brought no comfort. When night fell, the sky remained clear. No wind. No stars moved. The moon hung in place like it had forgotten how to rise. You volunteered for second watch. You needed to move. Needed to do something. The fire dimmed as the others fell asleep, if they slept at all. Jesse lay with his hat pulled low, one hand on his rifle. Cookie hadn't even bothered with a blanket. He just leaned back against the wagon wheel and closed his eyes like he was waiting. You mounted your horse and rode the perimeter. Nothing moved. No coyotes howled. No rabbits darted through the brush. The earth itself felt paused. You tried humming like Saul did, but the sound died in your throat. It didn't feel welcome. That's when you noticed Saul was gone. He wasn't in his bedroll. Wasn't near the horses. You scanned the ridge and saw him standing alone on a bluff just west of camp. Hat off, arms folded behind his back, just watching. You rode up slowly. He didn't turn. "Quiet night," you said, voice dry. He nodded once. "Too quiet." You waited. He spoke again, softer this time. "This is the kind of day that makes men forget they're alive." You didn't know what he meant, but it stayed with you. You looked out over the plain. The sky shimmered, the same way heat does above dry stone, but it wasn't heat. The air was cool, and the shimmer felt alive. "Ever feel like the land is holding its breath?" you asked. Saul finally looked at you. "It's not the land," he said. And then he turned and walked back toward the fire. You didn't follow. You stayed there on the bluff, watching the stillness, trying to feel your own heartbeat, and wondering what was waiting when the silence finally broke. It happened just before dawn. The night had stretched on forever, starless, windless, heavy. The kind of night that presses on your chest while you sleep, like the sky is laying its full weight across the earth. No one got rest. The men tossed. The cattle stood. Even the fire burned with strange reluctance, flames low and blue around the edges. You had returned from watch an hour earlier, but you didn't bother lying down. You just sat near your horse, rubbing his neck, watching his eyes. Animals know. He hadn't blinked in over a minute. Then, without warning, it broke. Not with thunder, not with hoofbeats, not with fire, but with a sound so small it almost didn't register, a crack, like dry branches breaking somewhere just beyond camp. You froze. So did the horse. Another crack, closer, then a rustle. Jesse sat up instantly from his bedroll. Cookie swore under his breath. The trail boss stood, revolver already in hand. What the hell was that? You rose to your feet, pulling your rifle from your saddle. Saul was already gone. No one had seen him leave. The sound came again, louder this time. And stranger. Not quite human. Not quite animal. It didn't echo, not the way it should. It landed flat. You stepped to the edge of camp and scanned the darkness. The fire behind you flickered. Movement. Low to the ground. A blur in the near black. Then gone again. The herd began to moan. A sound of warning. Then came the scream. Not a man. Not a cow. Something else. Something raw. Something old. Every man in the outfit stood now. Rifles cocked. Faces pale. Eyes scanning the black edges of camp like something would crawl out of it. And then it did. Just shapes at first, barely visible. Figures. Wrong. Moving like water and shadow had found legs. Jesse fired first. A single, wild shot into the dark. It lit the landscape for half a second. And what it lit, you still don't understand. Something bone-white, with eyes like holes, with no mouth, but somehow it spoke inside your skull. It said nothing in words. It said stop. Your ears rang. You staggered backward. Another scream, louder. Closer. The cattle exploded. Not literally, but with motion. Panic took them like fire takes dry grass. They ran. Through camp. Through tents. Through men. You dropped your rifle, dove aside as 3,000 pounds of longhorn thundered past. Someone shouted, Jesse, maybe, but you couldn't hear him. The wind was screaming now. Or maybe it was you. The fire burst as cattle ran through it, embers flying like angry wasps. Suddenly, he was in the center of camp. On horseback, arms raised. Not shouting, but humming. That tune again. Endless. And the panic slowed. Not stopped, but softened. The herd still ran, but not wildly. The figures, the shapes, they began to fall back. Into the dark. Into nothing. The air grew colder. And then it was over. Like a switch flipped. Just silence again. But this time, not the heavy kind. This time, it was emptied. Like something had left. The fire flickered low. The horses whinnied nervously. You stood, shaking. Your hands wouldn't grip the rifle. Jesse sat with his back to a rock, bleeding from his scalp, but alive. The trail boss had his hat off. No one spoke. Except Saul. He rode slowly through the camp, humming. That same tune. That same rhythm. And when he passed you, he met your eyes. There was no fear there. Only knowing. You couldn't speak. But you nodded. And he nodded back. You didn't sleep that morning. No one did. There was no sleep left. Only questions. And the dust trail of the herd, fading into the light of a new dawn. By sunrise, the world looked almost normal again. The sky was soft blue. The wind had gentled. The campfire smoldered as if nothing had happened. If someone had stumbled across your camp that morning, they might have thought it was just another trail outfit getting a slow start after a long ride. But everything was different. The herd was gone. Scattered. Maybe 100 head remained nearby, nervous, grazing in loose clusters. The rest had bolted into the darkness, miles away by now, maybe more. Some might never be found. The camp was wrecked. Blankets torn, cookpots overturned, gear lost to the stampede. Jesse had a deep cut over his temple. Cookie's left boot was gone. No one asked where. 2 of the younger hands had vanished during the chaos. No one knew if they'd fled, fallen, or something else. And Salt was nowhere in sight. Not that anyone expected him to be. You stood at the edge of the trail, watching the hoofprints that veered out into the rising sun like confused branches. It wasn't just one path, it was dozens, each going in a different direction. A map of fear. The trail boss called a meeting after breakfast. What little breakfast there was. He sat on an upturned crate, hat in his hands, face pale beneath layers of dust and fatigue. "We've got a choice," he said flatly. "Keep going, or turn back." No one said anything. "Rails still ahead," he continued. "For maybe 5 days. We cut north, try to pick up the herd as we go. Maybe find the lost head. Maybe not. But if we turn now, we lose everything." Jesse leaned against a post, arms crossed. "And if we go forward?" The boss didn't answer, because they all knew. This wasn't just a decision about cattle anymore. The land had changed. "So had you?" Finally, someone muttered, "What about Saul?" No one answered that either. After a long silence, the trail boss stood. "I'm riding on," he said. "If you stay, you're on your own." One by one, the men nodded. Because what else was there to do? You'd come too far to turn back. You rode out just after midday. It was strange, following a trail without a herd. The silence was louder. The absence of thousands of hooves made your own horse's steps feel thunderous. Dust didn't rise. No moans. No groans. Just dry grass and that hum that now lived in your mind. The trail narrowed as you headed north. The land turned red beneath your horse's hooves, not blood red, but clay, iron-rich and cracked from years of sun and nothing else. You'd heard of this place, the Red Trail. Nothing grew here except thorns and questions. The sun felt hotter, the air thinner. The cattle you still had began acting strange again, balking at shadows, refusing water, walking in circles before settling. One collapsed without warning. You dug a shallow grave, but the earth was hard. It took hours. That night, no fire. Too risky. The wind was back now, but different. Whispery, like it was speaking through teeth. As you lay in your bedroll, eyes wide open, you felt it, a weight pressing down from above, not like a storm, but like expectation. The land was watching, and whatever path you were on, it wasn't yours anymore. Sometime past midnight, you woke to the sound of humming. The same old tune. Familiar. Comforting. You sat up fast. But no one was there. Not Saul. Not anyone. Just the sound drifting over the ridge. You stood and followed it, rifle in hand. At the top of the hill, you saw them, 20 or so head of cattle, standing quietly in a hollow. Still, like they'd been placed there. And in the center, a campfire. Controlled. No man tending it. Just a circle of stones and a flame that burned blue. The humming stopped. You stepped forward. But before your foot touched the soil, the fire died. And the cattle turned as one, walking slowly, unafraid, back toward your camp. You stood there a long time, breath held, rifle forgotten. Eventually you followed. The others were awake when you returned. No one asked what you saw. But Jesse looked at you differently. Like he knew. You slept that night. Not well. Not peacefully. But you slept. And in your dreams, you were riding the red trail, alone. Except, not quite. You couldn't see who was beside you. But you knew the rhythm of his horse's hooves. You knew the silence between his words. You knew the hum. And it was enough. The land changed again on the third day after the red trail. This time, it wasn't slow or subtle. One moment, you were riding through a stretch of dry scrub and dusty wind, and the next, the earth rose sharply, folding into hard, rust-colored ridges. The rocks jutted up like the spines of something ancient and long buried. The horses struggled. The cattle staggered. The sun disappeared behind narrow canyons and jagged bluffs. The iron hills. That's what Jesse called them. No water, he said. No cover. No welcome. And after an hour, you believed him. Every sound echoed in those hills. A hoof hitting rock. A man coughing. a steer slipping on loose gravel. It all bounced and twisted in the canyons like the land was trying to remember it, or repeat it. You rode in single file now. No room for side-by-side. The walls on either side rose up like red knives. You saw old carvings on some of them, names, dates, brands. Some were fresh. Some were so worn they looked like claw marks. Late that afternoon, you found the town, or what was left of it. It wasn't on any map, but it was there, hidden in a dry basin surrounded by iron ridges. Maybe a dozen buildings, all collapsed inward like they were ashamed. The roofs had caved. The windows were just black holes. The church steeple still stood, but barely. It leaned west, and the bell inside swayed even though there was no wind. No sign of life. But the air felt full. You didn't want to stop. None of you did. But the trail boss made the call. "Shelter," he said. "Better here than exposed." So you rode in, tied the horses outside the old saloon, set up camp in the dirt street between broken walls. That night, no fire again, and still heat, like the buildings were remembering summer. You explored a bit just before sunset. Carefully, rifle in hand, you found old things. A child's wooden toy, a rusted branding iron, a pair of boots still standing upright in the corner of a collapsed jail cell. No bones, but it didn't make you feel better. You walked past the church on your way back. The bell chimed. You stopped, turned. No wind, no rope, no birds, just the chime, low and heavy, echoing up into the hills. You didn't go inside. That night, no one slept. The cattle huddled tighter than ever. Horses twitched in their sleep, hooves scraping dry earth. One of the younger hands, Donnie, sat awake by his gear, hat in his lap, eyes staring into the ruins like he expected something to come walking out. Sometime after midnight, Jesse whispered, "You ever think maybe some towns die, but don't leave?" You nodded, but you didn't say it aloud, because something was still here. You just didn't know if it was listening, or waiting. Near dawn, you walked to the church. Don't ask why. You couldn't sleep. Your hands wouldn't stop shaking. Your mouth was dry as chalk. The door creaked when you pushed it open. Inside, it smelled like dust and ash. No pews left, just outlines where they used to be. A pulpit, half burned. The bell rope had rotted off and lay coiled like a dead snake in the corner. But in the center of the room was something new. A circle of stones, carefully arranged. And in the middle, a familiar item. A silver spur. The same kind you found after the fire days ago. You picked it up. It was cold. And next to it, scratched into the floorboards with something sharp, was a word. Still. That was it. Just that. You backed out slowly, the spur clenched in your hand. You didn't tell the others. Not that morning. Not ever. But when you rode out of that dead town, and the sun finally broke over the iron peaks, you didn't look back. Not once. It was supposed to be 4 days to the railhead. That's what the trail boss had said after the fire. After the stampede. After the canyon full of bones and the town that didn't die right. For days. But somewhere in the Iron Hills, time slipped. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But quietly, in ways you only noticed after it was too late. The sun started rising late. Setting early. You'd ride for hours, only to realize the shadows hadn't moved. Or they moved too far. The trail stretched longer than it should have. Places you passed began to look like places you'd already seen. Same rock formations, same twisted shrubs, same broken fence post leaning against the wind. You asked Jesse once, "You think we've come back on ourselves?" He didn't answer. He just spit in the dirt and kept riding. The herd, what was left of it, moved with the same dull obedience. Not slow. Not fast. Just steady. They didn't graze much anymore. Just walked. always forward, as if pulled. The sky never gave you storms again. But it didn't give you peace either. It hovered overhead like a ceiling you couldn't quite reach. Flat, too wide, too gray. The wind whispered, "Boys." You stopped marking time. You stopped counting days. Even Cookie stopped asking what day it was. "You ever wonder," he muttered once over a tin plate of cold beans, "if maybe we passed the railhead and just didn't see it?" The idea chilled you. The thought that you could have ridden right past your destination, and somehow the trail refused to end. Because by then, it wasn't about where you were going anymore. It was about where you couldn't leave. Jesse said it plain one night, "We ain't on the same trail anymore." You looked at him, waiting. He tapped his boot against a stone. "Used to be we were following a route," he said. "Now it feels like the route's following us." He wasn't wrong. The signs were everywhere. A tree you passed one morning only to pass again after lunch. A river that flowed north one day, then south the next. A grave marker with no name, just a coil of wire and a hat laid on top, that looked exactly like the one you saw 2 weeks ago, 200 miles back. And Saul? Gone again. 3 days now. No one had seen him. No footprints. No signs. And yet, sometimes at night, you heard the hum again. Carrying on the wind like it didn't need lungs. One night you followed it. Quietly. Rifle in hand, scarf pulled over your face. You walked for nearly a mile, feet crunching dust that crumbled too easily, like old parchment. And then, nothing. The humming stopped. You stood at the edge of a narrow ravine, empty, shallow. You turned around and found yourself facing camp. Right behind you. You'd walked in a perfect circle. But no one else had moved. They were still sleeping. Even Jesse. You sat down that night and made a mark in your journal, just a small one. A line, no date. Because you didn't know what day it was anymore. Didn't matter. The next morning, the trail boss gathered the few men who were still riding with you. 5, maybe 6. Hard to say. "You want to turn back," he said. "Do it now." No one moved. "Good," he muttered. Then he turned and kept riding. So did you? Because even if the trail had forgotten its end, you hadn't forgotten your duty. To ride. To finish what was started. Even if finishing meant following a path that looped forever. Even if the world behind you vanished every time you looked forward. Even if you woke up one morning and no longer remembered where you'd begun. Still you rode. And the trail rode with you. There were only 4 of you left now. Jesse. And the trail boss. The others were gone. Not buried. Not counted. Just gone. Some turned back and never returned. Some vanished quietly in the night, their bedrolls left behind, still warm. One man walked out into the plain at dawn and kept walking until he faded into the dust. You never found his boots. By now, no one asked questions. You rode because there was nothing else to do. But you felt it, under your saddle, in your teeth, behind your eyes. The end was close. You didn't know what kind of end, but it was near. Jesse stopped shaving. His face grew wild, like the land had climbed up his skin. Cookie didn't cook anymore. He just passed around cold beans and hardtack, hands shaking, eyes fixed on nothing. The trail boss rode silent, grim as a grave. He didn't give orders, didn't check maps, just followed the dust like it was a river only he could see. And the cattle? Barely 30 head left. Still walking, always walking, like they knew something you didn't. That night you drew last watch. You didn't argue. You wanted the silence. The camp was a pitiful thing now, just a circle of blankets and tin pots, gathered in a dry wash under a crooked cottonwood. The stars overhead were dull, smeared with thin clouds. The moon had shrunk into a sickle. You saddled up and rode the perimeter. The cattle didn't stir. Your horse didn't flinch. The only sound was the creak of leather and the soft clink of your spur against the stirrup. You passed the edge of the camp once, twice, 3 times, and on the 4th, something changed. A shadow. Not a moving one. A missing one. You pulled your horse to a stop. Listened. Nothing. And then you heard it. A hum. Faint. Familiar. It floated across the plain just like before. Soft as dust. Carried on wind that didn't move the grass. You turned toward it. And saw him. Standing alone on a ridge. Not armed. Not mounted. Just watching. You dismounted. No rifle. No fear. When you reached him, he didn't speak. You didn't either. For a long moment, you both stood there in the silence, the hum still echoing around you like it came from the ground itself. Then finally he said, "It's time." "For what?" you asked. He turned to you. "To stop writing." You wanted to argue. You wanted to scream. But nothing came out. Because you were tired. So tired. And you understood. "You finishing it?" you asked. Saul shook his head. "No." "But you are." You looked back at camp. The fire was still. Jesse asleep. Cookie slumped against the wagon wheel. The trail boss sitting upright, eyes open. Waiting. You turned back to Saul. But he was gone. Just a ripple in the wind. Just a memory. You rode back to camp. The stars blinked once and went out. And in their place was dawn. Not soft. Not slow. But immediate. Brilliant. Like a curtain ripped open. You blinked. The herd was still. The men were rising. And for the first time in weeks, you felt it. The end. Solid. You mounted your horse. Turned north. And behind you, Jesse said, "Let's finish it." And the trail didn't stop you. You rode north. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. There were only 3 of you now, Jesse, Cookie, and yourself. The trail boss didn't wake that morning. He sat in his blanket, eyes open, face peaceful. But when you touched his shoulder, he didn't move. Didn't breathe. You buried him at sunrise beneath the crooked cottonwood, marked his grave with a rock and a single boot. Nobody said a prayer. There were no words left. You rode on. The cattle followed, those that remained. Not because of ropes. Not because of riders. But because the trail moved beneath them and they had no choice. By midday, the land changed one last time. The red earth gave way to flat stone, miles and miles of it, cracked like dry skin, stretching all the way to the horizon. The wind stopped. The air stilled. And then ahead, a fence. Not long. Not high. Just enough to say, this is the line. Beyond it, rails. Rusting. A station platform, sun-bleached and leaning, sat abandoned beside the tracks. No train. No smoke. Just a single bench beneath a tin awning, a sign barely hanging from one hook. Abilene Junction. But there were no buildings. No stockyards. No town. Just silence. And a faint humming. You dismounted. Walked toward the station. Jesse and Cookie behind you. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. At the bench, something waited. Not a man. Not Saul. Just a folded coat. Dusted with trail soot. And beneath it, a journal. You opened it. Inside were pages of careful handwriting. Source. Names. Some familiar. Some not. And at the very end, one last entry. If you've made it, the trail is done. But you aren't. Remember. Or write again. Just don't forget what you paid to get here. You closed the book. You looked around. No voices. No sounds. Just Jesse lighting a cigarette with hands that didn't shake anymore. Cookie sitting on the platform with his face in his hands, not crying. Just breathing. You sat. And for the first time in longer than you could measure, you stopped. Really stopped. And let the silence hold you. Because now it wasn't hollow. It was earned. You don't know how long you stayed there. An hour. A day. Maybe more. But eventually, Jesse stood, nodded at you, and began walking back toward the trail. Cookie didn't follow. He just lay down on the bench and closed his eyes. You sat for a moment longer, then rose, took one last look at the platform, at the sign, at the place where the trail had ended, and stepped back into the dust. Because maybe it wasn't about the destination. Maybe it never was. Maybe the trail wasn't something you followed. Maybe it was something that followed you. And all that ever mattered was how you carried it.